Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for dropping by the channel. So in this video, I'm pretty stoked to be talking to you guys about this very rare model of the iconic Sinn U1 dive watch. This one is known as the Sinn U1 White. Some people also refer to it as the Snow White or the Panda. And this watch was, I believe, limited to under 400 pieces in total. And I had a very difficult time researching this online. I haven't even found another YouTube video on this. So this might be the first one on this particular model and colorway of the Sinn U1. Now historically, it's kind of an important watch for the brand because I think this debuted around 2009 or 2010. And it was said to be one of the first Sinn models that they not only tegimented the bezel, but the entire case and the clasp as well. And then they also covered the entire watch in a PVD-like coating as well. So it's extremely scratch resistant, and the hardness for their proprietary tegimenting procedure makes this watch withstand about 1200 Vickers on the hardness scale. And it is the same steel used in German U-boats, so it's extremely corrosive resistant as well. You don't even need to wash off this watch after exposing it to chlorine or salt, similar to like the steel used in Rolex models with the 904L designation. So let's quickly go over the dimensions and then I'll talk about some of the actual specs for the watch. Similar to other U1s, comes in at a case diameter of 44 millimeters across the case. If I flip the watch to the side here, the lug to lug, the gap between my thumbnails right here, is an even 50 millimeters. Note that there are drilled lug holes here to quickly switch out the strap if you would like to, put it on a bracelet or some other strap options. Now case thickness comes in at 14.6 millimeters. That's to the bottom of the screwed in case back here, to the top of a flat sapphire crystal. And just note how well they executed the anti-reflective treatment on this crystal. It seems to disappear at most angles, and there's anti-reflective treatment on the underside and top side of this crystal, just like on pretty much every other Sinn model up to date. So to me, the star of the show really is the colorway that they went with. This white dial is gorgeous, and it's extremely legible, and it's a completely white dial without really any grainy texture, unlike what you would find on a U1 or a more modern U50, kind of with a matte black grainy texture on their dial and stark white printing. This one, you could really see the well-defined indices for the hour markers. And I know that they're printed on, but the way it's executed gives them a raised and almost applied look on the dial, which is really, really quite unique. And the handset is also blacked out, and they're polished hands, but they do have a bit of grainy texture where they painted the lume application on the handset and the markers. And yes, they actually use a black Luminova pigment, which is actually quite rare to apply to most watches because the black pigment, I know, isn't as intense or as potent as, say, some of the white paint or different Luminova formulations. And yes, it's not as potent as some other dive watches on the market, but I think Sinn has a good reputation when it comes to the longevity of their lume, even though it's not overly intense. But definitely the truncated triangle marker at the 12 o'clock position on the bezel is the brightest spot and gives you good orientation should you choose to use that bezel as an elapsed time marker. Now on the sports models, Sinn tends to use a captive bezel design. So if you look around the bezel, there's actually small screws that fix the bezel into place at different anchoring points. So it's not going to pop off with friction. This is very similar to, say, what like Breitling does with a lot of their models. It's a 60-click unidirectional bezel. The action is actually quite good. I've heard remarks that some people say that the U1 bezel is a little bit loose, but this one is not really that loose at all. Just a little bit of backplay, but once it's locked in, it's not going anywhere. And in terms of the actual alignment for the bezel, I do think it lines up properly, Although because the sapphire is so thick, there's a bit of an optic illusion sometimes depending on how you look at it. So if you kind of look at the watch off angles, you can see that the bezel does line up with the indexes, but looking at it straight on sometimes, just depending on any refraction or reflections, you might see that the bezel alignment might look a little bit skewed. Now I have owned a Sinn U1W in the past, which is a 41mm, so a slightly more compact version of this watch with a 500-meter depth rating. And this one is the original larger size. You get 1,000 meters of water resistance with this guy. And I actually like the layout a little bit better because there's a little bit more dial real estate. It's kind of more of like a Bauhaus or minimalistic design. But reading this watch and getting a good read on time is extremely easy to do with this particular colorway. Now, if you look at the 3 o'clock position, you do have a date cutout, and they did truncate the 3 o'clock index ever so slightly. But the date disc is perfectly color matched in white, and you do have black printing so you can get the right day of the month. You can see that the crown is offset to about the 4:15 position, and just the way it lines up the belly of the case and the lugs here, it does kind of protect the crown because there are no official crown guards. But very nice knurling to the crown. It's quite large. You have the Sinn S signed logo. And if you manually unwind the crown, because it is screwed into the case, in the neutral position, you can actually manuline the movement, which to the best of my knowledge, this guy is running an ETA 2824 top grade movement, which does have the manual unwind feature in the open position. If you pull it out to the first position, it has a quick set date. And if you do pull it all the way out, you can hack the movement, so stop the seconds. You can set it to any reference time, and then you can start it back up again. And this watch catches the threads very easily. So the crown action on this watch is very easy to use. And because it is off-centered, it's not going to be digging into your wrist as easily as, say, a traditional 3 o'clock crown. Now, I do have to mention the factory strap that comes with it. It is a Sinn white rubber factory strap. And again, this is an indication, according to my research, that this came from the European or Asian market. The few that landed in North America actually was on a black Sinn strap, which I actually have here. The previous owner actually cut this rubber strap a little bit short, but I can still get this guy on my wrist because there's a dive extension on the clasp, which I'll show you guys right now. So flipping this watch over to the back, the clasp you can see is very nice. It does have Sinn engraved into the clasp. This triangle logo here is the marker for the tegimenting process. So if you see this marking on any Sinn model, you know that the case or bracelet or clasp has been tegimented. Opening it up, you can see nicely milled out swing arms here, and then you even do get a pull-out diver's extension here. It would have been nice to have a little bit of micro adjustment, but with these particular straps, you actually cut it to the right length. So unfortunately, you know, if you buy this watch and then you go and flip it, the next owner, if they have a different wrist size, they might be left with having to buy replacement rubber, or you can easily just throw it on any other strap. There's a universal 22mm lug opening. And before I get this guy on wrist, I just want to show you the case back. You can see that it is designated as a 1,000 meter water resistant watch. It is made of German U-boat steel, and there's some other information on here as well. And here's a quick wrist shot of the Sinn U1 White on my 19 centimeter circumference wrist, or about 7.5 inches. And you can see that this watch wears perfectly on my wrist size. Now, normally I'll wear Sinn watches on the bracelet, but I'm actually pretty impressed with how they did the nice color match white strap with the white dial. And this black PVD coated clasp here works quite well to balance out the head of the watch as well. Now, in terms of pricing, you're really going to pay what the market dictates, I would say, on this guy. I was fortunate to get this from another local watch enthusiast, and he was the original owner that purchased it while he still lived in Asia about 10 years ago. I think at the time the retail was around 2,500 USD, but I've seen these as high as 4,500 USD, and they would include it with the tegimented full stainless steel bracelet as well, as opposed to just the rubber strap. Now, if you're interested in a quick comparison, I'm just holding it up against my 42mm Breitling Super Ocean here. And I've actually compared this watch to the U50 in a past video, so I highly recommend you guys check that out. I think that's more of a fair comparison because it's more similar in dimension and water depth rating. But guys, if I missed anything or if you have any questions, please leave it in the description of this video. I'll do my best to get back to you. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.